And here is the designer, Brian Geisen, on the left. And in the top is the real designer, lesser known, Ian Somerville. He was a lover of William Burroughs, who is the man to the right here. Ian Somerville sadly didn't live very long, but he did all the mathematics behind this creation. So interestingly, it was called the first art object you see with your eyes closed, hence their posture, experiencing it. It creates a flickering light. You put a cylinder on a record player, if you've not seen one, and the light hangs in the middle, and it spins, obviously. This one was 78. I've got ones at 45, recalibrated. And that specific speed, combined with that specific cutouts, creates a striated light across your closed eyelids, which induces a certain brainwave I'll be telling you more about. It's alpha and theta, and it induces an altered state. So you don't need to take anything else. You have an entheogenic effect from this wonderful sculpture. And they were so confident it was wonderful, they thought it would replace television, and so it should have. And this was the quote from artist Brian Geisen, the man on the left, that inspired him to ask Ian Somerville to how can we make this? He said, "I had a transcendental storm of colours, visions today, in the bus when I was coming back from Marseille. We ran through a long avenue of trees, and I closed my eyes against the setting sun. An overwhelming flood of intensely bright colours exploded behind my eyelids, a multi-dimensional kaleidoscope whirling out through space. I was swept out of time. I was out in a world of infinite number. The vision stopped abruptly as we left the trees. Was that a vision? What happened to me?" So that was in the late 50s. So he realised he'd lost all sense of time. He had all these weird ideas coming into his mind when he was quite tired. And what had actually happened was he'd entered a kind of twilight, slower brainwave of alpha theta, and this effect that is scientifically called a flicker had taken hold. So these two men used this device many times, probably with a lot of passion and everything else, to create really strange art objects. They kind of shared a symbiont mind. They collaborated with collages, techniques for cutting up, tape splicing. They really were early multimedia pioneers, montaging, very unusual techniques. Famously sort of documented in Burroughs' book, The Ticket That Exploded, quite visually in that. So if we could have the next slide, please. Okay, this is the history. So this technique's been known about thousands of years, but around the 1820s, Jan Perkinyar actually hand-illustrated these beautiful little patterns, and he calls them form constants. So he did this just by waving his hand across his closed eyelids with a gas lamp, and before him, I think monks have been doing this with the sunlight. We can all do this, so we can create our own flicker. We obviously don't have a very special speed. And what we see are these entoptic phenomena behind our closed eyes. So amazingly, they're in colour as well. And my next slide, when we move forwards, I will be showing you more about that. So entoptic is referring to the Greek word for within vision. And these patterns are only actually occurring in the visual processing part of your brain, sort of where the signals come in from the optic nerve. So we have similarities, so they become kind of documentable archetypes that we share. Many people see Catherine wheels. Many more people see dancing swastikas. They're very common, and various forms of crosses. And you can see they've been categorized. And then more recently, this smaller kind of drawing on the right is from two South African entheogenic explorers, Lewis Williams and Danson. And they suggested that from Paleolithic art is inspired by subjective visual phenomena, and normally described by shamans and spiritual men during altered states of consciousness. But they described there's two main themes. You've got a lot of animals in sort of cave art, and then you've got a lot of geometric figures, such as dots, circles, and lines on the other hand. And they wanted to explore more about the importance and the meaning of these geometric patterns. And what I'm going to show you is how the combination of either a dream machine or the light that I use, which is called a Pandora star, which is like the kind of the modern succeedant to that, how we see these patterns and more, and in a multitude of colours. So you've all probably tried to induce the phosphene kind of colours as a child mainly, because I don't know why, but it doesn't hurt so much then, where you rub your eyelids closed with your hands, and by pushing the actual exertion on your retina, you induce the colourful phosphenes to sort of in response, and we can also see those just with stroboscopic light. So if we could move to the next slide, please. This is my documentation of, on the left, those strange little sketches of my audience provide these. So as an artist, I work with altered states of consciousness, and I measure the brain waves of people during an experience, so it's quite an ephemeral form of art. And after they've been exposed to, say, a dream machine or a flickering Pandora light, we ask them to describe a little bit of their experience, and if possible, any kind of sketch is more than welcome. And as you can see here, we've got some kind of auras coming out of hands, we've got descriptions of often energy, physical parameters shifting from being a very small body to your perception being beyond the body. There's a lot of descriptions of water, underwater tunnels in space. And what I'm comparing this to is the entheogenic output is really similar to what has been described and created by people taking deductions such as ayahuasca, such as the Shipibo Amazonian tribe in the bottom right. Those four beautiful, colourful squares are huge textiles, so they've woven, depicting visions and colours exactly as they perceived them during their ayahuasca rituals. And the very above that, the rather crazy little squares, on my website, they're all animated things, but if you imagine them animating, these are what we share when I experience the Pandora stars with people. Behind your closed eyes, this multitude of colours, phosphenes, just through closing your eyes and experiencing a white light. There's nothing else like it. So I'd like to move to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is a little bit more about the Pandora star. So the dream machine, everyone has some kind of image of, either from a film or from direct experience, maybe in a living room. Pandora star is one of the new technologies where we use the frequencies of light, but we use a dynamic software so we can actually choreograph how long, what kind of sine waves, the intensity of it, and what the desired output is. So it could be for meditation, it could be for journeying, it could be for out of body, it could be a 3-hour experience. Generally they're about 30 minutes, these light sessions. So the technology itself, not very sexy. On the top right, you can see there's 12 lights in the star diagram. They're all white. 3 are kind of warm white and 9 are cold white. And what we use them for is, I help people in the artwork to enter a hypnagogic state. It's maybe not so easy for everyone unless they're really kind of practiced at meditation. So with the light flashing at you, with your eyes closed whilst you recline in a dentist chair, it becomes somewhat, you surrender, and the white light with the certain frequencies around the same speed of the dream machine, so that's spinning at 8 to 10 times a second, creating an alpha wave. We take it a little bit further and we mix it up, and over about 12 minutes we give a combination of 12, 10, 8, 6, 4 hertz, and we keep mixing it. So just as your brain becomes familiar, we change it again, so there's this kind of a threshold. And there's a feed forward and feedback technique of adjusting the consciousness. But what's been really fascinating is people's feedback from that, their direct verbal interview afterwards. And I'd like to share with you a little bit about what does it feel like, these changes in phosphenes and flicker. So if we could move to the next slide. So this is what it looks like if you are directly inside one of my installations. This was most recently in Liverpool. This was a few weeks ago. So the lady on the left is actually wearing a headband because she has EEG equipment connected. Her brainwaves are being monitored, and the signal's being transmitted to the computer on the right. And although that screen is not clear at the moment, I will show you more of that on my final slide. So what's actually happening here, what we can see, is a direct correlation between the Pandora star. You can see she's facing, you can see it's lit up. Now it's going to be flashing really fast. I've got lots of videos of this kind of thing on my Vimeo channel I can show you. And she has her eyes closed, her brain waves are changing through the feedback. Your brain likes to be entrained to a certain extent. It will follow some of these stimuli. So she looks pretty relaxed, and we're also sonifying her brain waves during the experience. So for everyone else who just walked in thinking, what's going on? We can see the changes on the huge screen. We had dual screen visuals And we were using something like VDMX, so we have brain waves affecting MIDI, affecting sounds, and affecting visuals, all in real time. And what happens is the more the person surrenders and stops questioning, what am I supposed to do, the deeper their entrainment towards the theta goes. And the benefit of entering into a theta state, you feel a light hypnotic trance. So often, after your experience, you don't know how long you were sitting there for. Not in a silly way. Maybe, you were told repeatedly it would be 15 minutes, but afterwards, when asked, you think it was just a few minutes. And the next sort of thing, apart from time distortion, is the non-linear narratives greatly increase. So somebody who would not describe themselves as being particularly creative or having a very inspirational day, afterwards will say, wow. Then it normally goes, thank you, which is great. And then they say things like, I saw nuns in a canoe, 7 nuns. I was like, wonderful, that's a great, that's album artwork just coming out. So you get these, surrealism, really enhanced, deep visuals. And sometimes you may experience memories from, of course, your own life. They may not be wanted, but the thing is, in this twilight theta state, this hypnagogic state, which is similar to when you're just drifting off to sleep, and you get those ideas, but you either go to sleep or you pull out, but they tend to not really be, you can't maintain them for very long. So you experience the idea maybe at a slightly further away distance, so in a way that is also a useful kind of lightly hypnotic process of allowing things to move away from you. And this is just like the dream machine, except this is programmable, it's very portable, and it can do a lot more. It's also a lot more expensive. What I love about the dream machine is we can all have it, make it, whether it's cardboard, paper, laser cut plastic. This is a very high-tech light, and it's generally used by the people who supply it for wellness retreats, deep meditation, and so on, in combination with sound healing. And there's one warning that accompanies any flickering light experience. If you are thinking you'd like to try it, I can help you try it. And it's in case you have ever experienced photosensitive epilepsy, then that's really going to be not suitable. And that's maybe 1 in 10,000 adults. You probably would know by now, either through a disco or the light off of a swimming pool. If it's dazzled you and you've lost yourself for a second, then these kind of photic entrainment altered states are maybe not for you. I'm going to move to the last slide now, which is a deeper look into the artwork and a little bit more about the brainwaves I measure. So I'm a researcher. It's unpaid, but I love it, at Greenwich University. It's a kind of visiting position. So mainly I'm looking at the publications. And I'm looking at altered states, particularly lucid dreaming was my previous focus. And currently it's more towards the hypnagogic, just daydreaming, the benefits of just allowing your mind to wander and letting go, and being a bit more open-minded and not so in control. So where I measure the brainwaves from are only the frontal lobes. So I'm not using these shower caps with multi-channels. I've used those in previous jobs. And from the frontal area, it's really useful and interesting for me because it's our decision-making area. So I can see if someone's really concentrating and thinking, what am I supposed to do? I feel silly sitting in this chair. And the minute they let go and the time thing starts to happen, we see their brainwaves really change. And as you can see on these 2 lovely images at the bottom right, we can't see the word here maybe, but this says beta. And you can see there's quite a thick cluster of activity, whatever it is, electrical activity, waves all there. That's me looking at the screen, like really counting things, really attentive. And above it is almost an inverse, and it's a hypnagogic kind of state. One side, so the 2 little graphs are your left and your right, exactly as you're looking at them, above each eyebrow. So you have the graph that has a black background. The left side's really calm, really low amplitude. It's wonderful. This person's in a theta wave state. I can only imagine they're having a real ride of amazing visuals. They've surrendered, they may be problem solving, or they might just be totally relaxed. Maybe there's no nuns in canoes. But on the right side, we've got this kind of pulsing, rhythmic pattern, and that's one of their eyes is kind of starting to flicker with the light. And that sometimes happens, even when you feel really relaxed. Your eyes might kind of twitch because of the highly stimulating stroboscopic lamp. And when we ask people to describe things afterwards, they start talking about colours and the combinations they've never seen before. And It's wonderful, you know, really, really intense psychedelic colours. And I remind them at that point, it was just a white light. And generally there's quite a bit of amazement there. They think that we've been shining like fairy lights at them or something. Just above the little graphs of my brainwave data, you can see a real shortcut to what the brainwaves, kind of the different frequencies. So they're broken into speeds. And the one that everyone talked about in the 60s and still do for meditation, it's wonderful, it's alpha. You just close your eyes, breathe deeply by slowing your breath. You know, you start to enter a relaxed state. But if you can take that a bit further and either have flickering, might be on the train, through the trees, just like Dyson described, or if you induce it yourself with your hand, or if you sit in front of a dream machine you've constructed at home, you can allow your mind to go deeper and, as I've said, receive new ideas. So I've been really fascinated with the feedback from people, the amount of kind of amazement we've heard, that they just sitting in the chair, you can't believe what they're experiencing. So it's phenomenal, and it's a phenomenon that I keep studying and I like to bring out in artworks. So I'm kind of wrapping this up because I hope you've got some questions for me, and I know it's a little bit late, so thank you for your time, and please ask me anything I might be able to answer.
Fabulous. That's brilliant. I love the sound of having a go on one of those lamps. At some point, I shall definitely do that. Does anybody have any questions for Luciana? Any questions? I'm sure that yes, I knew there would be some questions. Yeah, fabulous.
It sounds fascinating. I'd be interested to hear what are the sort of practical applications of this for day-to-day life of someone who isn't an artist or just an ordinary person.
Oh, there's a wonderful place. So the inventors of the technology, they're based near Old Street in London, near the roundabout. So the Pandora Star is the lamp. They also have Pandora Spa, and they will offer you the most deeply relaxing, rejuvenating kind of body massage combined with huge gongs, so you'll be surrounded if you want that type of treatment, so you can go really deep. Or they offer workshops in lucid dreaming combined with the lamp, so people will prepare for these events. But you can just have, just like you would book a regular massage, you can have a really deep, beautiful one with the light. And there's a multitude of programs. So I keep mentioning the theta wave one. There's an acid squirrel, there's a deeply meditated one. I use one quite regularly called Motivate. It's about 17 minutes long, so you can kind of choose what you want after a consultation with them. And you could just lie in a chair, you don't have to have any massage, but they specialise in a holistic and real well-being centre.
Did you say acid squirrel?
That's the one I was doing yesterday in the University of Kent. We did about 30 people on acid squirrel.
Fantastic. Can you bring the acid squirrel next time? We ask you the acid squirrel. Any more questions? Any more questions for Luciana? And I just want to ask one thing. You mentioned hypnagogia, is that right? Is there something hypnopompic? I'm sure.
Exactly. So that's the other side of sleep. Just as you're waking up, you start to get awareness that you're awake. If you don't rouse yourself too much and just stay there, you may dwell in the hypnopompic state, where again, theta waves are kind of around you before everything kicks in and you're aware of what you're supposed to do and time restraints and all that rubbish. So they're really beautiful, these liminal states either side of our sleeping routines.
Fantastic. Any final questions for Luciana before we wrap up for the evening? In that case, I shall bring proceedings to a close. But Luciana, thank you ever so much for that fascinating.